Good morning. Well, as we look at the instructions that Moses gave to the priests and to the people about these sacrifices, we find that some animals could be consumed and could be offered as sacrifice, some could not. And he's very specific about the ones who could not be offered. Many people have often wondered why certain animals were chosen. And the conclusion that I think we've come to is that these were animals which were in Eden with Adam. These were the animals that God had put there to be with him. Whereas some of these other animals, probably they weren't in Eden. And when we had come even the time of Noah, we find some animals regarded as clean and some were regarded as unclean. And it was the clean animals which were supposed to be offered as sacrifice, not the unclean animals. Why is there this distinction? Because this life exists in all of them. Well, believe it or not, it's a very clever distinction, because a lot of the animals whom Moses said should not be used in this way, and animals which can very often carry disease. For instance, he says, you must not eat of the flesh of the pig. Why not? I love a bit of pork myself. I love it. Why did Moses say you should not eat of the flesh of the pig? Well, when pigs are slaughtered in our country at this moment, the flesh is examined very carefully by special people, because the pig can actually carry the tapeworm. And if there's not this special examination, people eating the flesh of the pig could in fact themselves become contaminated. When Moses was out there with these people, he knew nothing at all about tapeworm. And examining the flesh of the pig, he wouldn't know what he was looking for. So he says quite simply, the flesh of the pig should not be eaten. Today, of course, we can eat it with safety, because it is examined carefully to make sure that the pig hasn't picked up this particular thing. But there, in the wilderness, if they'd done the same thing, they could easily have infected themselves, and infected themselves in such a way that it could have been detrimental to their health. See, today, if a person should actually be infected with a tapeworm, well, they go to the doctor, they realize something has happened, they'll give them a special medication, it kills the tapeworm, and the tapeworm is passed. But they didn't have that type of medication at that time. And so when Moses says certain animals should not be eaten, as we look at them carefully, we find that a lot of them carry different diseases. And so the animals which are offered up were in fact animals which are healthy for the eating and healthy for doing all that they were doing in these situations. Different animals being offered in different ways. For guilt offering, for burnt offerings, for guilt and fellowship offerings. Sometimes the priests taking part of it for themselves, because they too had to live and they too had to find a way of feeding their families. If you look forward to the time of the great prophet Eli, the great judge of Israel, we are told, this is right at the very beginning of the book of Samuel, that his sons were also priests, and they went into the temple. But instead of waiting to take their portion, they would say to the people bringing the sacrifices, no, we'll take this, or we'll take that, or we'll take something else. There was a restriction on what they should be able to take. But the sons of Eli, who offended God by what they were doing, were in fact bullying the people to allow them to take more than they should. See, God is overseeing these sacrifices as well. And that's why he's saying, offer me the blood back as a sign that you recognize the animal's life, which has had to be finished in order that you might live. I know why vegetarians feel the way they do. You know, I go out in the fields and I see the sheep, and I go out in the fields, I see the cows, and I see the bulls all prepared, and I know that some of them are going to be taken and going to be offered in the slaughterhouses, and in a couple of weeks' time, I'll probably be eating their flesh. And yes, sometimes I feel strange about it. But even as I do so, I recognize that this is the way God has made the world, and this is what he's offered to us. And that's why when I sit down at my meal and I see the meat on the plate in front of me, I give thanks. I give thanks to God for all that he's given us. And I give thanks as well for the animal that has given up its life in order that we might be able to live. This is important. And Moses was showing the people all about this as he dealt with the sacrifices there in the wilderness. There was one further sacrifice which I've mentioned before, the sacrifice of the red heifer. Here this particular red-coloured animal was taken outside the camp and slaughtered and killed. His blood was poured back into the ground as it should have been, but then the body was actually burnt and turned to ash. And later on, different ingredients were added to it in order that it might create a place of cleansing. The death of this particular animal was not for eating, not even offering as a burnt offering. This animal, his body was very turned into soap, that the people could use these waters as an act of ritual cleansing as well. We will continue again with this next week, and God bless each one of you. Amen.